Hello and welcome to Admin Stories. If you've been sticking with the series so far, appreciate you. I've really enjoyed this passion project, bringing up these old memories, telling the stories of them, and seeing your guys' reactions to them. So this story is one of our bigger stories. In fact, it's kind of one I have to split into two parts, only because there's so much stuff that leads up to the actual event. And I mean, to be honest, it's understandable. This incident spanned over a few months, and when stuff like that happens, there's so many little incidents that happen in the middle of them. So for context, I'll make sure I go through all of them. So anyways, let's get into the salt mines. Now, before I fully get into the story and tell you everything that happened, let me explain how our admin ranking system worked. So the weird thing about the Outpost is it's been a community that's been around for so long and switched between a couple owners that admin roles got bloated. So you started with your trial admin, which was fresh out of the gate. We just accept your application for whatever server you applied to, and you have powers on that server. The new admins were given a little bit more power on top of the server that they're already on, and they were, they're trusted a little bit more. And then you hit the regular admin, which gave you your powers on every server, and you're able to freely help out wherever you were needed, along with responding to forum posts, like having, admin on the forum. And then, from there, you became a officer, which was basically, it was like a head admin, but it was select few individuals that did the meat of everything. They handled, most admin applications. They handled fixes for the server, personnel, ban appeals, and all that nature. And then you had the head admin, who were basically longtime admins and handled very extreme situations where they needed to come in. And then you had the owners, of course, who obviously funded the servers and pushed for donations, yada yada. So with the admin rankings established, the person that we're going to talk about today, particularly the creator of the salt mines, was a user named Manny. He was a regular JB player who eventually put in his admin application to help GP with its struggling need for fucking admins, because they always needed one at all times because of how many stupid ass rules that was on JP. Manny was level headed. He was, how do I explain him? He was normal. He was regular. We knew he was Jewish. That's about all we knew. He sounded mature for his age, and it spoke well for him. He handled himself very well in certain situations, especially when it came to admin, especially when it came to ban appeals and bans in general. And actually, in one situation with a user named Razzleberry, who was a shit poster, fun guy, but he had acquired 2 bans on Jailbreak, and if you acquire 3 bans in a certain period of time or of the same type, you get permanent ban. It's just to say you're a troublemaker and you're not going to change your ways. Well, Razzleberry was already kind of nervous about his 3rd ban that was coming, and he just didn't want to get pulled up into something dumb. And while on the forums one day, it was a totally unrelated post, someone poked at Razzleberry saying, it's funny because you're on your 3rd ban, so your opinion really doesn't matter. And something to the Accords made fun of Razzleberry saying the Holocaust wasn't real at one point. And instead of, replying in a level-headed tone, Razzleberry proceeded to post 9 pages worth of dialogue, pictures, information, proving the Holocaust was in fact not real. Which, just gonna say, there's a line between shitposting and anti-Semitism, and in this situation it was just anti-Semitism. But even though being of the Jewish descent, Manny didn't let his emotions get the best of him. He banned them accordingly. He didn't put any extra to it. He didn't react out of emotions. Along with the rest of us, we just said, okay, cool. So eventually Manny actually rose to the officer rank because he was good at being an admin. Me personally, however, Manny was kind of strict on his rulings. I was more laid back, and that's one of the negatives about admins, is not every admin's the same way. Some are too strict, some are too laid back, some don't enforce the rules the same way the others do. And that's one of the problems with Jailbreak, is there's so many fucking rules, it was always hard for us to stay on the same page. But, you know, we got by. And eventually, being mostly a server admin, the owners requested all the admins, hey, can you guys start being present in Mumble? Mumble was super easy for people to get control or get in contact of an admin, and they were able to react quickly. We did have something on the servers called Insay, which allowed you to communicate with other people from a different server, but unfortunately that shit got spammed way too much, and we basically had to shut down. So Mumble kind of became the precedent of the owners for the admins, which was fun. On Mumble, however, I'm not gonna lie, we were a bunch of shit posting meme lords, soundboards, yelling, arguments over dumb stuff, just having fun in general, which was great. Actually, it brought the community together. It made us, you know, you got on Mumble to have fun. It wasn't just we need an admin. We were there to enjoy enjoy what Outpost had made for us. However, some users felt that the high energy of Mumble kind of got annoying. We didn't have a lot of channels because everybody usually stayed in the same chat. I'm not gonna lie, it kind of got loud. So eventually we split them into multiple channels, but that wasn't just enough because people could freely move in between. And Manny kind of suggested to the owners that we be allowed to make private channels that people were able to control. I personally was against this idea, but, you know, in the end it became a thing. The creation of the Love Shack, or otherwise known as the Salt Mines, was created. It was a place where Manny and a couple other users stayed in because they didn't want to be, you know, drowned out by the memes. People always complained that if you went to a Love Shack, you're not allowed to meme, you're not allowed to make any jokes because punishments are severe. And they didn't play around, they didn't warn you, they just kicked or banned you, which created a couple instances, and we'll get into that later in the video, where all of it went to shit. After the Love Shack was created, and you know, the first couple private channels were starting to get trolled by users saying, you know, it's just a bunch of, you know, salty people in there that don't want to have fun. We noticed that people stopped showing up in the Love Shack again, and come to find out that a second Mumble was created. And it's funny, when you make a Mumble for a TF2 server, if a user creates a second Mumble for that TF2 server, you know, it splits your user base, and the owners weren't happy with that. In fact, at one point they requested that the Mumble be disbanded and you come back to the original Mumble. The private channels will stay, but you got to get over that, is basically the consensus of what was said. And, you know, it only built, like, the salt of, you know, being told you can't have a second Mumble, being told to deal with the shit posting, the meme lords, and all that. I mean, kind of sucked for them, not for us. But that's not the only thing that started the downhill trickle. So one of the things that happened with Manny was we have a thing called FileZilla, which was officer restricted. They could go in there and look at logs, basically all the chat of the previous days, previous games, map changes, whatever, to see if users broke the rules or support evidence in certain bans, or, you know, find evidence of ban appeals, you know, find a way to exonerate them from that. Well, one of the things on FileZilla you could do actually is mess with some of the settings. Give yourself more commands. Honestly, you could do a lot. Now, head admins are able to do this directly on server with file command, but officers didn't have this access. You had to go through FileZilla. Now, let me tell you, you're not supposed to do this if you're an officer, because you're not supposed to touch that shit. You're inside the server. We had a thing called Archon that was some server settings or a map or something of that nature, and lo and behold, one day everything kind of fucked up. We don't know what happened, only to find out that Manny was actually in FileZilla messing with stuff. And I gotta tell you, that pissed off the server owners pretty bad, because it's like, what the fuck is he doing in there? And unfortunately, one of Manny's responses to that, because Epis was our main fucking taught himself to code to fix shit officer, Manny said, I just wanted to see what I had access to, which was a pretty bad reasoning. So his FileZilla access was removed. He was the only officer that couldn't go into it, and that kind of rubbed him the wrong way. It was his own fault, but it didn't change anything. So that's also kind of where our divide started. All the other officers had FileZilla, and he had been punished for doing something bad, and nobody stood up for him because it was his own fault. But that's, that was just another layer of the salt mines. He was salty, he felt like he was being targeted, and with him being told to be present in the mumble, get rid of a second moment, it started building up to the meltdown. And I'm not gonna lie, that me, Epis, kind of didn't help with that, because we started pulling pranks on Manny just for fun. We were just having fun, but one man's fun is another man's not fun. I don't fucking know the way to say that exactly. We did bad shit, okay? We didn't really do anything harmful to Manny, but I mean, it would get annoying after people constantly fuck with you. So the first thing we did was I got on there and said, hey Epis, go along with this meme. I'm going to convince Manny of something. And after a long conversation with Manny, I convinced him that RD and Tony wanted us to label ourselves as what type of officer we are. And I basically said Caboose is going to name himself the furry officer and have that in his tag on his Steam profile. I'm going to be the horny officer, because at the time I was just a horny little shit. Epis is going to be the bully officer. He was known as the bully officer because he was the Australian admin who took no shit. Jameek was going to be known as the Brit officer because he was the British officer, and yeah, he was on time. Honestly, me and Jameek weren't on at the same times because he was in Britain. He handled the shit at night while I usually in bed. And Manny, given all the stuff that happened, I told him that he had to put salty officer in his tag. And at first he was kind of skeptical, but then he did it. And on his Steam profile for a good while, he went around with the tag salty officer. And if the pranks stopped there, we'd probably been good, but they didn't. Me and Epis actually took it a step further, and we copied another user's profile to the T, and even gave ourselves the achievements, his favorite games, his groups, all that stuff, made it look identical, and named ourselves Nanny, and then messaged him, acting like we're a negative version of him, where we're not salty and we're very kind and all that stuff. Not funny, not really funny, but it was kind of funny actually. It was just fucking funny. No, yeah, I'm not even gonna act like it wasn't funny. And that, you would think that would be the end of the pranks, but nope. I was on Mumble one night, and I'd started kind of using a live streaming service to just meme around with people, and there's a couple clips of me with the horse mask on doing random shit. And one of the things I did was I recently found a color printer, surprisingly, hooked it up and printed off Manny's profile picture and served him dinner, tucked him in for a bedtime story. I remember we made a hot pocket covered in peanut butter with chili powder, pickle juice, and something else. It was revolting. It was disgusting, and I accidentally stepped on the damn thing while I was serving him dinner. And then I tucked him in for a bedtime story, and we were all done. Which, that was more in, kind jest. It was an inside joke. Everybody was having fun. And I would imagine if he saw that, which I think he saw the screenshots, he wouldn't have been happy. And he wasn't happy. In fact, the divide, we stopped talking to Manny. He'd stopped talking to me. And I did one more thing that turned the downhill trickle from a downhill trickle to a fucking downhill river race. It sloped that motherfucker and pushed everything so much faster. I made a map for Jailbreak called Snowballs. The map itself was, very big and had a lot of games. Terrible textures on it, and I will never defend that. I gave no shit about texturing. As long as the games were fun, that's all I cared. I always get critiques on that. But in the map, in the very first version of Snowball, as a homage to all the admins, I made the Hall of Admins, which had everybody's profile picture put in little frames and spread out where everybody could walk down the hall and see the admins. They had their names and all that. And the officers got bigger profile portraits on the right side of the hall. And at the very end of the hall was mine, my friend JFJ's. Go check out his channel if you haven't. He's a YouTuber, don't you know? My friend Sal, which was Mexico. And we had a little button that played music. But I digress. It doesn't really matter what was in there. It's what I did to Manny's profile picture. So Manny had a very unique profile picture. It was a little anime boy. So I stretched it out where you could get, like, it was about the size of a regular player model. If you happen to walk into the portrait, like try jumping through it, you would phase right through it. I made it hollow, but it didn't look hollow. And once you jumped through it, you fell down into the shaft. And if you look to your left, I had put 172 entities of breakable blocks of salt. And that was the salt mines. You could sit there in TF2 and play Minecraft with salt. And it was a little inside joke with people who played the map. You know, it was fun. And in the very first version, I actually had one of the blocks in the very back, very special block, have an actual picture of Manny. And personally, this was too far. But I threw caution to the wind when I made it. I was like, no one's ever going to find that. And Manny never confronted me about it. So I said, okay, well, we're all good. Right? Nope. So with all these things, the more and more divide in Mumble, the salt mines, the love shack, whatever you want to call it, everything started getting bad. We started disagreeing on certain instances, and the owners popped in and said, hey, you know, I just thought about this. Officers are kind of dumb. Like, the whole role is dumb. We should have... Epis does most of the coding, so we're going to give him Modzilla. Everybody cool with that? Said, yep, totally. So they got rid of the officer role. Now, Epis technically was above most people. I handled more of the user base. Epis handled the backlog. Caboose was, you know, honorary. And Manny didn't take kindly to the officer role being removed. He felt like he was being targeted again. And that just was another little bit of a slope to the downhill river that turned into a downhill flood. In the final couple days before the meltdown happened, I was in Mumble and RD came in and we were all shit posting and laughing, and RD goes, hey Taco, I'm going to link all the Mumble channels and I want you to say something crazy. And if you're listening, RD, that is exactly how I think you sound like, and I'm unapologetic about that. But I said, sure, I love being, you know, the center of attention. I love making an ass of myself. So when RD linked all the channels, I started yelling rampant dolphin sex just over and over as loud as I could. And RD, not knowing that the Love Shack was off limits for memes, linked the channel and then unlinked everything. And it turned into a loud, spammy clusterfuck for a solid minute. And then Manny jumped in, what the fuck was that? Because they were playing a game or something, we interrupted that. I was like, oh, fucking... And this is kind of where I started to lose, you know, I know I'm pulling a prank. You know how YouTubers pull a prank, and then when someone retaliates on them, they get all pissed off? Yeah, I kind of started to lose that. And I said, oh, fucking get over it, Manny. It's not a big deal. And he said, oh, you're just fucking... I randomly hear someone yelling. I was like, oh, shut the fuck up. It was your owner. It doesn't matter. And that was it. It was a small argument, but it was literally, we were on the edge for falling off the cliff. Like that downhill flood had crescendoed on a fucking cliffside, and we're now a man standing on the ledge. And a couple nights went by, and it was during the bonus duck update in TF2. And I remember it fondly, because me and Caboose were playing Battlefield 4, and it happened in an instant. Digma was a user who was a soundboard user. We recently changed our rules on soundboards, which as long as they didn't spam over 3 seconds, you were allowed to use them. He had been jumping from channel to channel, playing the duck quack sound that from the bonus duck update, and it was, you know, it wasn't annoying, but he went into the love shack, and then like 2 seconds we hear the mumble thing say user Digma moved to the love shack, and then after a second, Digma was banned. He was banned off the server. It said user Digma has been banned off the mobile server, and I protested this, and that's where the meltdown happened. Because Manny, and I brung Manny into a channel, and it went sour. But this video has already gotten long enough. That is all the context you need for what I'm about to put in part 2, because it's rough. It's I'm not gonna act like I was level-headed. No, I lost my fucking cool, and I feel sorry for how I reacted, but I feel like it was needed. And part 2 will be coming right after this. So if you enjoyed this video, drop me a like, subscribe, leave me a comment, tell me anything that you experienced there in the salt mine if you're one of the people who used to play with us. Honestly, you're gonna want to stick around for what's about to come.